Hello, everyone, and welcome back to the Money Healing Podcast. Today, we've got something different happening here on the podcast. We're kind of focusing on women's health, and with me, I've got somebody that I love following on Instagram. We've been going around in the same business circles for the past year. We were in Kat Lee's Business Alchemist mentorship together, but we've never actually met in person. So, well, this is in person. This is in person as it can be, right? So I would love to welcome Rachel Root here on the Money Healing Podcast. Rachel Root is an integrative women's health coach. So welcome, Rachel. Thank you for being here.
Yeah, thank you so much for having me, Nadine. I've been such a fan of you and your work for a while, so it's really fun to get to have this chat together.
Yeah, I've had my eye on you ever since I started this podcast. It was named something else at the time, and I'm like, yeah, we're gonna get there. We're gonna start talking about menstruation and women's health and all that stuff because it's needed. And I love that. I love what you do, and I like to first ask all my guests, what is turning you on in life at the moment?
Hmm. Well, I'm trying to revision my life at the moment because
Yes.
I am very pregnant. I have about 7 weeks left of this, and
Mm-hmm.
I'm 38 years old, and I've spent my life not as a mother to this point. So
Yeah.
now I'm trying to create like a really positive vision for what this next phase of my life is going to be like, and
Yeah.
it's a nice thing to fantasize about right now.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, it's cool when a lot of people come and work with me just as life slaps them in the face in one way or another. Something happens and they're like, "Oh shit, nothing's making sense. What's going on?" Right? And of course it all links up to money, but it's cool when you know that you're changing your life and your life as you know it is going to change forever. You're no longer, just Rachel, you're Rachel the mom forever. And it's very exciting, and you are such a cute pregnant person on like the photos. A lot of people look cute pregnant, but you look particularly cute, so yeah. I just wanted to say that.
Oh, that's so sweet to hear. Thank you so much. I'm so excited to talk about the menstrual cycle and women's health today, but what I'm excited to explain to your listeners is how this closely relates to money and our ability to have
I didn't know
abundance
that.
and manifest.
No
So
way.
I think
Seriously.
yeah, it'll be fun to have this
Oh my god, you just
conversation about
surprised
how
me.
these things connect and how, like, yeah, everything is connected as we know, but these two things
Yeah.
are more connected than I think we realize unless we
Fuck
really know.
yeah. Oh
Yeah.
wow, I really didn't expect that. Well, this is exciting. So before we dive into all that, tell us about your journey and how you got to where you are.
Okay, how much time do we have? Let's see. Let's see if I can make this short version. But um, well, let's start at when I decided to sort of study medicine. And I'll
Mhm.
have to go back a quick step.
Okay.
I love education, and I started off as an education major, and then in college, I realized very quickly it just was not the right fit to me. I was
Okay.
not interested in those courses. So the next best thing, in my opinion, was like becoming a doctor and wanting to study medicine. So I started to think about that path, but reality hit after I started that course of like, I don't think I want to be an ER doctor. And I honestly felt really um, I would say jaded about my ability to help people within the field of Western medicine.
Okay.
So I ended up studying physical therapy because I felt like it was sort of this in between. It's like hands on, you're helping people. And I was going through a ton of health problems during that time myself. And I was interning at this great sports medicine clinic with this Japanese baseball pitch specialist. And he
Random.
recommended, I
Yeah.
know, he recommended I see an acupuncturist for the things that I was
Okay.
struggling with because nobody else seemed to help at
Mhm.
that point.
Mhm.
So I went to this student clinic, which was all I could afford at the time. And this student who saw me could explain to me what was happening and was more insightful than years of going to Western physicians. She just seemed to ask the right questions, and I left feeling like more cared for than I had felt
Wow.
before. And it just like I just something opened up, and I was like, okay, Chinese medicine is it. This is
Mhm.
what I'm going to do. So then, while studying Chinese medicine, I more and more started to learn about like the women's health side of things, how to heal my body. Um, I just really fell in love with women's health, and more I realized that was the track I wanted to take.
Wow, yeah.
But I was not satisfied completely with only Chinese medicine. I felt like there
Okay.
was so much new things coming out within the field of like Western medicine and integrative medicine, and especially um, I yeah, more and more research. There's more women in medicine than ever before. There's more women in
Yeah.
research than ever before. So my brain and my heart were really interested in making that a really integrative approach.
Integrative, that
An
word that I
integrative
cannot pronounce for some
approach.
reason today. Yes. Yes.
And yeah, so sort of my journey of studying Eastern medicine, Western medicine, and then realizing so much about how we heal comes down
Mhm.
to how we care for ourselves. But changing the
Mm.
way that we do things is not easy. So that's when
Mhm.
like coaching came in, right? It's like, how do I
Gotcha.
help people change the things that they need to change in order to, I guess, cultivate a healing state is the way I like to say it,
Oh,
which is
wow.
which is really hard when we are used to living our lives changes very hard. So then this
Mhm.
approach to how do I help people change, and then it kind of all came together, and that's where I ended up where I am now.
You could just tell how much you love what you do just by looking at your Instagram. Your
Oh,
Instagram is one of my favorites, honestly. I've had a very weird relationship with my period all my life. So it's been up and down, and I try to befriend it, and then sometimes I feel like it's gonna murder me, and then sometimes we become friends. And just reading things, and you're opening questions in my head in a very good way, in the way that you post things and the way you talk about things. And I definitely feel like my period or our periods speak to us or communicates. They communicate with they. Our periods communicate with us through pain and through intensity. Is that something real, or is that something that I just made up to feel to feel better about the past 20 years of my life?
it is so real, and it's so
It is
insightful
okay.
for you to think of that way. It's a monthly feedback system. It's designed to show us how we need to be caring for ourselves. And unfortunately,
Eee.
the world that we live in right now, is the pace that we have to go in and function every day, there's not really time for the self reflection and the connection to our menstrual cycle for
Mm,
us to really get all the benefits and wisdom out of it. But we'll talk today about like how our menstrual cycle is actually so it's really there to help us grow both physically, mentally, and
yeah.
spiritually. Outside of being able to just create new humans, it's really designed for our own internal self growth as well.
Well, you just gave me goosebumps, honestly. I feel like we need to dive in now.
Yeah, let's do
Let's
it.
go. Tell us more. I mean, that was a
Yeah.
teaser and a half, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was. I kind of want to start off by framing this because this is a money podcast, and framing this a little bit about how this, in my opinion, connects with abundance and money and our ability to manifest. And I
Mhm.
want to sort of turn it around on you first, if I can, just
Okay,
a little bit,
of course.
because I know through studying you and your work and the beautiful offerings you have to give that in order, or I would say the people that tend to be the most successful with creating money and having money, we know in the archetypes speak within your language.
Mhm.
are the warriors and the magicians, right?
Yes. Oh my God, Rachel. Yes. Yep.
So, but you know this so much more intimately than I do. So I'd like
Mhm.
to just maybe we can remind everybody listening, like, what are the qualities of these people and what makes them warriors and magicians?
Sure. So I like to always say that to have the right balance in money, so the thing is, like, there is always a school of thought of so much discipline, you got to do this, you got to do that. And then the other school of thought that is just kind of recent in the past like 20 or 30 years of just attract it, just manifest it. So I like the marrying of both sides, the balancing of the magician and the warrior, meaning like, yes, you are the creator of your life. You are your soul, and your spiritual practice is part of your money journey. But also you've got the warrior side, which is your practical side, the side of you that knows your values, knows what your goals are, makes sure that your goals are not coming out from your trauma, they're coming out from your soul. So it's more like a collaboration between your soul and your human side, pretty much, in like very simple terms. And it's not a 50-50. I'm noticing the more I work with people, the more I see like it's more of a 75% magician and 25% warrior. And the magician really balances out the warrior, because if the warrior is not balanced by the magician, it can swing into becoming a tyrant or becoming a martyr. So when
Mm.
we're so savvy and so like, not just with money, but so like practical, and we stand on both feet, and we're like really like strong in who we are, we might either become too strong, or we might want to save the world. So that is why I always like to have that balancing of the magician. And just to, give credit where credit is due, all these archetypes were created by my mentor, Deborah Price. Hey, Deborah, if you're listening, it could be, I don't know. So Deborah actually was the one to certify me to use these archetypes. But of course, because of my love of the nervous system and of trauma, I took them a step further.
Yeah,
So yeah.
because those marry each other very well. In order to
Hmm.
be our warrior self or to be our
Yes.
magician self, we need to
Hmm.
have regulated nervous systems. And
Yes, absolutely. I
in
mean,
order to have healthy menstrual cycles, we need regulated nervous systems too.
there you
So,
go.
really, really, it's all coming together. But what I like about these archetypes a lot is that the warrior to me, in from an Eastern medicine perspective, she's very young, right? She goes out, she
Hmm.
gets
Hmm.
it done, she does the work,
Yes.
she's not afraid to um learn what she has to do or ask the questions or get
Hmm.
that bank account, set up for
Open. Yep.
whatever
Yep.
it
Pretty
is.
much. Yep. That's the
And the
warrior.
magician is the one who's like has the ability to safely receive or to
Hmm.
trust or
Hmm.
to have some sort of alignment with life that feels um, less doing and more receiving. Am I getting this right?
Exactly. More of a yin energy. Yes. You got
And
it. I
this
mean, you
is
said it so beautifully.
Yeah, and this is the yin and yang balance. Well, our menstrual
Hmm.
cycle is exactly the same way. It's set up for us to go out and do and create and be in the world. But also, there's this very important other aspect to it, which is in order to be in sync with our menstrual cycle, there's a period of time where we really need to be able to like rest and receive and trust and let go. And
Whoa. Okay. Wow.
our hormones that are released during different phases of our cycle really set us up for that really well. And
Okay.
I'll kind of start from the beginning. When it's time to menstruate, this is when our estrogen and progesterone levels drop to their lowest
Hmm.
state. And we kind of become a more of an empty vessel, right? And we start to bleed, we shed, our energy is much lower. And this is sort of like the winter season of the planet, right? This is the
Hmm.
time where um, there's not a ton of abundance. It's time to bring all of our energy down into our roots and rest and wait. So we have this sort of
It's
season of our
amazing.
menstrual cycle that is akin to winter.
Hmm.
And it's also because it's not a very young time. It's not a time to go out and do things. It's a time to dream and vision and set intentions and think about these bigger goals that we want to create, or how we want to, if we want to talk about money, how do we want to do that, and what do we
Hmm.
want for our lives, and what do we want to look like. It's a great time for that because it's not the time to like charge out and go do things. It's
Okay.
also paired with this time where uterine contractions that happen in order for our bleed to happen well.
Hmm.
We release a hormone called oxytocin. This creates
Hmm.
that uterine contractions, and you might know this is also known as like the love hormone. So it's a time where we can kind of be like filled with love and relax. If it's a time that we're going and doing too much, we can release stress hormones that can counteract the oxytocin. They're agonists to each other.
Hmm.
So stress hormones will actually make this like uterine contraction smooth oxytocin thing that's happening. It can interfere with that. So if
Okay.
if we're doing too much during that time, we're not really honoring our inner winner. We're not connecting to our intentions and our dreaming and visioning. Then we can have problems during this time, more problems during this time of the cycle, right?
Why didn't I know that 10 years ago? Why don't we know this? Why don't we all have paid leave for when we have our periods? I work for myself and I try to do that for myself, but when we're employed, why isn't this a thing? Like, this is real. This is real.
This is real. And unfortunately, it's because our society was set up by men for men,
Hmm.
and
For
they don't
men.
really need this time. And
Hmm.
so it wasn't really put into place within society. And once women got into the working world, we just had to sort of roll with how
Yes.
it was going. And
Hmm.
unfortunately, it's to our detriment, in my opinion,
Yeah.
because this this time where we can rest and receive and vision and dream is highly productive. It's not unproductive. It's a tool of like deep self-reflection. Otherwise, we're just going in this time, in this sort of rat race way where we're not actually using all of our wisdom in order to be able to make the things that we want to make happen, or
This is amazing.
um, make the money that we want to make
Yeah,
happen.
like just making our life, manifesting our life and
Right.
designing it and kind of creating it from intention as opposed to reaction.
Exactly. Yeah, we can be so much more wise if we have that
Yeah.
period of resetting and thinking. Then, after a period is over, estrogen starts to build within our system, and we start to get that estrogen back.
Mhm.
And this really, most people feel it. We're all a little bit different, so there can be nuances within this. But for the majority of people, that rise in estrogen again gives you energy to start to go out there again and start
Mhm.
to do the things that you want to do. And this is a time that tends to be a little more lighthearted, and you can feel creative, and you can feel you had that reset. You can go out there and be the more
Mm.
start to be the more young side of yourself, the more
Okay.
warrior side of yourself very
Mhm.
naturally, because your hormones are really helping your brain and your body respond in that way.
Oh my god, that makes so much sense for me. Okay, yeah.
Yeah, we get to ovulation time, estrogen's at its highest, and then we also get this great boost in testosterone. So then there's this feeling like I want to do it all and I can do it all, and I can, I can make shit happen. And it's
Mhm.
very it can be, if everything is healthy and balanced, it can be a time where you can really bring out that inner warrior and she can really, get things
Get
done.
shit done. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Ah,
And
okay.
then ovulation, when that happens, we release an egg from our ovary. And then we create a new organ in our body called the corpus luteum.
Mhm.
And she creates this hormone called progesterone. And we start to make an abundant amount of progesterone. And this changes our body and brain a little bit. It
Mhm.
influences in our brain in a way where we tend to be less focused on the external world and what's happening outside of us, and a little more tuned into the internal world and what's going on inside of us. So we start to go
Mhm.
back towards that yin energy again. We're moving from that yang energy,
Got it.
that height of
Uh-huh.
ovulation, and we start to close back in on this sort of yin energy within inside
Okay.
ourselves. And
Mm,
just to let you know, we're always balanced in yin and yang throughout this, but as
okay.
far as like an energetic feeling point of view, this is
Yes, I
coming
understand.
back to our yin side of things.
Mm. Mm.
And this progesterone that's happening with our brain, it also helps us analyze and edit and think about all the stuff that we're doing and seeing like, is this working for us? And this is sometimes why
So good.
we can be so emotional during that time
Mhm.
because sometimes it's just not, like we live
Yeah.
in a world where things are really hard. They're really hard for women. It's normal to get angry about the world, but we feel it more during this time because we're more in tuned with those inner
Oh, okay.
inner emotions and those things that are working and not. It can be a fabulous time for journaling or thinking like, okay, I went out there and I did the stuff, like let's reflect on how is it working for me and is it working at all,
Wow.
which is hard to do if you're going all the time. You don't
Mhm.
take that time to think, oh, okay, like let's edit what we're doing, like this is
Mhm.
working for me, this is helping me within my job or helping me within my goals or helping me within what I'm trying to do in the world. And this is not. And if we're not taking that moment to use that time of our cycle to really edit what we're doing, we're just going to keep going down the path
Yeah.
that is not serving us
Yes. Yes, and
until we
that's
crash
when
and burn.
exactly, that's I was about to say that until we crash and burn, and, like, from archetype speak, that's when we're just forcing that magician until it becomes a martyr or a tyrant kinda thing, where
Mm.
nothing's working, keep going, I don't care how I feel, I'm just gonna keep going. You end up either overgiving or being really angry at everyone, which is kind of yeah.
Yeah, you get
Mhm.
resentful because you're like, I'm
Yes.
doing, but I'm not
Mm.
receiving. But we forget
Yes.
to learn. We need to learn how to receive. I needed
Yes.
to. I'm still learning, but
Oh, we're all still
it,
learning because our relationship with receiving is so connected with receiving from our caregivers, from our parents in the beginning. And it's as nice as they were or whatever, there's always strings attached. It was always a conditional receiving of like, oh, you get good grades and you'll get this thing. And now we're like, so if I'm a good person, will the universe give me what I want? That's what I keep seeing a lot with my clients is like that's conditional relationship with receiving. Like, oh, so if I do everything right, but I did everything right, why is it not working? You know?
yeah, we think that if we're good girls and
Mm-hmm.
we do the things we're supposed to, everything's going to turn out fine. And unfortunately, the system isn't completely set up for that. We actually need to take our power into our own hands, so to speak, and
Mm-hmm.
reflect like, okay, I am doing and doing all the things, but how is this working for me and my community? How can we keep
Mm-hmm.
that in balance and not just have one benefactor in this and using
Yep.
all my energy up?
Yep. How do I stop extracting from myself pretty much and just not do that anymore? Yeah. And it's a slippery slope when you're a solo business person, isn't it?
Oh yeah, I think as we've gone through a particular course together, shout out to Kat if she's
Hmm.
listening. But we see like that in the cohort of people, one of the hardest things is to ask for what you
Yes.
you deserve, is to be able to ask for money for the services that
Hmm.
you've worked
Yeah,
so hard
it's very hard.
to
I understand.
learn.
Yeah.
And um yeah, but creating this balance within yourself, or your balance within yourself is already there. Let's say connecting to this balance within yourself
Yeah, and
rather.
not overriding it, not overriding yourself, not overriding what your body's trying to tell you, because what you just shared is so valuable. And yes, I mean, I learned about all that at school, but not like that. Not in a way that's like, this is a time for reflection. And this is when you're, instead of like, oh, you're overly sensitive, are you about to get your period, that shameful, like, are you on your period, like, question, because you're overly, not overly sensitive, but like you said, like, you see the world differently, and you're more in tune with things, and when things are not working, you're more in tune with them. That's why you're, quote unquote, overly sensitive. And I hate it when people ask me that, like, are you on your period?
Mm. I know it feels like such an insult, right?
I
Because
know.
we associate that with being, out of control or not your
Yeah,
normal self. But
imbalanced, or like, yeah, hysterical or whatever. Like, yeah, I really resent that. I don't like it when people say that to me. Luckily, my husband never says that to me. But yeah, it's just the way it is. People just say that, and it's mean.
yeah, well, yeah, it has definitely roots in the patriarchy. Being hysterical, it refers to the uterus, actually.
What?
So, yeah, yeah, the
What?
origin word of it is the uterus. So it's basically comes
Okay.
from having a cycle and having different emotions throughout the month, and those
Buggers.
changes not being the norm because men were the norm, right? And women
Hmm.
were not the norm. So
Okay.
then, yeah. So yeah, it's
Shit.
it's a nasty
Wow.
word, really.
Oh my god, I love this interview so freaking much. Tell me more. Tell me more.
Yeah, I will back up for a second because I
Mhm.
talked about our menstrual cycle being our winter.
Mhm.
Then we move into this like estrogen rising. So we refer to that as sort of our inner spring. So,
Okay.
and then our ovulation period is our inner summer.
Okay.
And our luteal phase, that premenstrual phase, is our inner autumn. And because we have this sort of monthly cycle within ourselves, this sort of mini yearly calendar within our monthly cycle, really helps the growth process,
Okay.
because it's that time to you know get yourself out there, try something, get creative, put that young energy into it, reflect, and then rest and receive and start over. And if we're using this time really intelligently, that's how, like, each cycle we go through should be helping us, you know, energetically, spiritually, psychically grow.
Mhm.
We should be
Mhm.
learning from this continuous, just like our plants and the things in nature grow because of the seasons of the cycle, because there's this
Gotcha.
time of growth and repair and starting over.
This
And
is
you gave
so
credit
good.
to I'm glad you're I'm glad that you're enjoying it. And I want to give credit to the teachers who really put this together for me, since you did as well. But if you're interested in learning more about this inner seasons in your cycle, there's an amazing book called Wild Power, and it's by
Mm.
Alexandra Pope and Shawnee Hugo Wurlitzer. Um, both, I believe they're both psychologists. So yeah, I believe that's their background, but they connected, women's mental health and the cycle and
Beautiful.
put this language together for us. When I read this
Mm,
book, it was really mind blowing to me because it was very connected to the way that Chinese medicine views and looks
mhm.
at the cycle and treats the cycle and helps harmonize with the cycle. So there was a big crossover there for me, and it gave a lot of language to this experience of our
Yeah,
cycle. So if you're interested in knowing more about that, that's
I actually
the
am.
origin. Yeah, it's a
So,
great book.
weird question. What's coming to mind now is that so we all have these apps that kind of track our period and tell us when the period's coming and all that. So, I've been in this habit of the app telling me where I'm at. But now that I'm 42 and I'm in a few weeks, um, my period's all over the place. So there's no app that can track the crazy wild ass thing that's happening inside of me. And now it's interesting because now I'm relying on my body to tell me where I'm at
Mm.
with my period as opposed to the app or the time of the month kind of thing. So how would you recommend people actually track it? Like track where they're at in like their body seasons as you were mentioning. Is it how they're feeling or obviously not an app? So now I'm like
Yeah, that is such a great question, and thank you for asking it. I think in order to use this information that we can gather from our cycle and these tools that come along with it, we first need to be the observers and um, build the awareness. So, like you said, tracking it is so helpful.
mhm,
So, what you can do is just every day write down in a few words like how you're feeling and what you're needing
mhm,
as you go through your cycle. And so the very first day of your cycle is the day of your full bleed. So if you're like lightly spotting or something, you're not quite there yet, but if you're on a full bleed, you can count that as cycle day 1. And so in your calendar or your diary, you can write one, just a 1, and then you might want to say how you feel and what symptoms you're having next to it.
mhm.
And if you can keep up with that, and just takes a couple minutes and a little practice getting into the habit, if you can keep up with that and do that for a couple cycles, then you have so much information about how you feel. Because the stuff we talked about, it's a general, right? But we're all
Mhm.
individuals. Like we're all going to
Yes.
feel a little bit differently, and we're going to have different needs and different phases of our cycles. And so you can just take that moment to self reflect and be like, oh God, what do I really want right now? And, for some people during their ovulation phase, what they want is to like, have a great time with friends and go dancing or something more young, right?
Yeah.
They want to like do something fun, let's say. That's not always how we feel at the end of our luteal phase. Somebody
Mhm.
invites you out and you're like, crap, I don't want to do this today. Like,
Yeah.
so you can note that with and correlate it to each part of your cycle. And then you
Mm,
have this information of, oh, this is how I typically feel then. This is how I typically feel then. So then you can start to sort of, have a projection in the future and keep track of saying, like, if you're going to make plans or you're going to do something, you can say, like, oh, I'll be on cycle day, let's say 29 at that point, and you have a
mhm.
32-day cycle, and this is a time where you don't want to do anything. So you can just
Yeah.
tell somebody, like, no, next week is better, right?
Yeah.
That's super helpful. But what you're mentioning is like once we get into that perimenopause, this like
It's another word I
period
don't
of
know how to pronounce. Perimenopause. I read it and I'm like, I don't know what that is. I know what that is, but I don't know how to pronounce it. Perimenopause. Thank you. It's like an English
yeah.
language thing here. Yep. Perimenopause.
Well, I don't speak 3 languages, so, I can't I just one, and sometimes not even that well, but, um, yeah, perimenopause, which is, like, a whole new term we should probably let the listeners know about.
Mhm.
It's this period of time leading up to menopause. Menopause is the stopping of your period, and you go into menopause 1 year after your final period. But the
Mm.
time leading up to that transition is actually a really long period. Most of us don't realize that we start to go into a whole new hormonal cycle anywhere it could be 10 to 15 years before. Some people don't have any symptoms until 4 or 5 years before. Some people start to have symptoms 10, 12, 15 years before, because
Mhm.
our brain and body are changing, and we're getting ready for a new phase in our life where we're not cycling anymore.
Yeah. Yeah. And for me, the only symptom that I know of, and I'm sure that once you start, saying things, it'll be like, oh shit, yeah, that makes sense, is that my period's all over the place. Like it used to be like clockwork. It used to be like
Hmm.
2 p.m. on the day, it's there. It's like my period is a Virgo. Like really prompt. But now it's unpredictable. Like my last one was 6 weeks. It was 2 weeks late, so it was a really long cycle. I didn't know where I was. I don't know what was happening. I had no symptoms, and then all of a sudden it came and it nearly killed me. And now I've survived. We're good now. I made it through. So yeah.
Yeah, this makes it very challenging to sort of have that weather forecast, if you will, of saying, like, oh,
Hmm.
my period, I know my period's coming in 2 days. They always have a 32-day cycle, right?
Hmm.
Yeah, this is a very, very normal symptom of early perimenopause, that our cycle lengths will vary, and there's nothing unhealthy about it within this period of time. Say this happened when you're 18 or 19 or 20, then that's symptomatic, and that's something that you actually want to tell, a menstrual health expert, a doctor, or somebody, so that you can work with your cycle in a way to regulate it.
Hmm.
Once we get into our 40s, those irregular cycles, they're not actually, there's no actual problem with it. It's a normal aspect of aging, but it does make it harder to track. Then you do
Yeah.
really have to rely on your internal feelings at that point. Hopefully you've made a connection enough with your cycle to say, like, oh, I know I always feel this way during this time, so this
Hmm.
must mean. But it does get more difficult, and it does require a little bit more patience and understanding and softness and tenderness with your body, that it's not going to work like clockwork anymore.
Mm. Yeah, you just hit me in the gut with that one. Softness and tenderness with my body, not frustration and like, where the hell are you? I need to plan my life. I need to know how until I can go to the hot springs. Come on. Tell me where you're going. Yeah. Hmm.
Yeah, unfortunately, we don't have that same timing and luxury, but we can use that information of knowing what we need, of checking in and thinking, what
Got it.
do I actually need right now? And trying to give yourself a little bit of that, right? Of having that self reflection of, what is my body telling me that would be really juicy and delicious right now? Would it be like a long conversation with a friend? Would it be a hot bath? Would it be a bike ride? Or would it be going to bed like 2 hours early
Now.
because I'm
Go
exhausted?
to bed
Yeah.
now. I
And
think for me, it was
actually
more like that.
listening.
Go to bed.
The hard part is to listen, right? We
Yeah.
don't, a lot of it, and I think this also goes back to manifestation too, is
Hmm.
a lot of us have a hard time giving ourselves what we need, because we don't ask ourselves, what is it that we want and need.
Yes.
We're
Hmm.
just we're just focusing on the outside world, right? Of like, what should I be doing? What, what did society tell me that I like, how I should be spending my time, or how I should
Yeah.
be making money, or how I should be
How hard
in
I
the
should work.
world.
Hmm.
How all of that. And it's easy to just keep running on that outside picture that we've created.
Yeah.
without ever actually checking in and thinking like, is this truly what I need or want? Is this really working for me? So even those like little check-ins in order to be able to be more in tune with our cycles and part of our, you know, um, a part of our cycle experience in a way that serves us more is having that
Mhm.
little check-in. It's like, what do I actually need instead of
Yeah,
what do I think I should be doing?
got it. So obviously all that connects. So okay, another weird question, chicken or egg question. No, you actually hang on. So I'm not confused. I know that I won't be as soon as I ask this question. So the nervous system tells your like determines your period's health, and your period and your cycle also produces the hormones that also influences the nervous system. I feel
A
like they're
hundred
kind of
percent.
like, yeah, in a cycle with each other. Yeah, okay.
Yeah,
Do they
you've
know
got
each
that.
other? Have they met?
I don't know. You got to ask your body, but that is 100% true. And I think that's something that we don't talk about. And I'm really glad that
Hmm.
you brought that up because it's not really voiced or expressed in this way, but they do both help each other so much. Where a regulated or cared for, as I like to say sometimes, nervous system really helps promote good hormonal balance because our body is either in this rest, digest, and reproduce state, which, reproduction requires our sex hormones to be balanced and in good standing. That works really well when we're safe, when we're aligned, when we're, regulated within our nervous system. Your body's going to be wanting to do that work really naturally. When there's a lot of stressors, or when we go into those fight or flight states, when we need the protection of our survival hormones, our body needs to switch its focus, and it puts reproduction and sex hormone regulation to the side in order for us to stay alive, because it thinks right now protecting you and making sure you are safe and alive is more important. So we're going to put that aside for a minute, and we're going to focus there so that we can keep you safe, and then we'll go back once you're in safety. Because in the past, our threats to our actual safety usually came in short bouts.
Hmm.
A run-in with a predator, or maybe a physical fight with another human,
A tribe
something
member.
that, yeah, something that was like, okay, we're gonna have to put a lot of energy into the system, make sure you
Yes.
survive it, and then once we do survive, we'll go right
Yeah,
back
shake
to
it off.
that
Mhm.
state, right? And you know this very well. It's this part of the way you teach as well. But there's also another aspect with our hormones, like our progesterone and our estrogen really help our nervous system work its best. They communicate with each other. Like progesterone tends to be a very calming hormone on the nervous system as well. And we need to ovulate in order to make progesterone. But we also need to not have so many stress hormones in our body in order
Mm.
to be able to have the energy to ovulate. So it's kind of this crazy like
Oh my
system
god.
where our hormones are super helpful for keeping our nervous system regulated, but we're not going to even create them in the first place if we're living in this dysregulated, more survival state. So then you can get in
Wow.
this really bad feedback loop,
Mhm.
or you can get into this really positive feedback loop where they're all supporting each other really well.
Do I look like the mind blown emoji to you? Because that's how I feel. Just feel like the top of my head is like exploding. That's awesome. Oh my god, that's so cool. Tell me
That's
more.
another, yeah, I mean, that's another reason why learning to care for our reproductive system goes way beyond wanting to get pregnant. And it
Mhm.
tends to be, even though I'm fertility specialist and I've been working in that for 10 years, the message that I end up wanting to get out there, like on Instagram or
Yeah.
into the world that I feel passionate about, is that God, this goes so far beyond just making babies. This has so much more. Like, not everybody wants to do that, and that's great and perfectly wonderful. But it doesn't mean that you can just ignore your hormonal health altogether and live the life that you want to live. Your hormonal health is there to help you
Mhm.
have the life, your best life. And so
Honestly,
caring for it,
that's yeah.
yeah, you
I
got it.
only learned that from you. I learned that from you, from following you on Instagram. That is the only time I learned that what you just said, because in the back of my mind, I don't want to have kids, so I didn't care because that's what I was told. I would go to the doctor and like have issues with my period, and they're like, "Do you want kids?" I said no. They're like, "Oh, you don't have to worry." That's what I was told so many times because they just didn't have the tools to help me. And then ever since I started following you, I was like, "Whoa, hold on. This is not right. I need to everything you said, like, yes, we need to care about our hormonal health, not just because we want to have children, even though I was told that so many times."
I know. It has been a misconception, within
Mhm.
medicine for a long
Mhm.
time. That if you aren't actively making babies, it's okay to just shut down the system and ignore it
Yeah.
because that's what it's there for. But we forget that estrogen helps our mood, it helps build our bone health, it helps protect our breast, it helps prevent dementia, it helps regulate our weight and our hunger. It
Mhm.
has so many things that it does outside of reproduction and making babies. And the same with our progesterone. Protects our brain and our breast health as well. It helps support our like mental health. It um I'm probably missing a million things here like, on the spot, but it has a lot to do with our health outside of
Mhm.
getting pregnant. And we're a lot of us are missing supporting that system because we're under stress, because we don't
Yeah.
know how to live in alignment with it, and we don't know how to make it our friend and our benefactor, where we're taught that we should just try to ignore it and survive it till it's over. We lose so much gold.
And it obviously has a lot to do with manifestation, like you mentioned. So that's a very interesting take. Not that I'm going to care about it just because of, financial health or prosperity. Now is it too late for me to take care of it at 42?
No, 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 not so ever. In fact, it's more important than ever
Okay.
because what we talked about before is that things don't work the same necessarily anymore
Yeah.
as we go
Hmm.
through a big brain change and our
Hmm.
body needs to do some shifting. And this time becomes a period of time where we're really vulnerable to like problems like problems that can manifest later in life that we want to avoid, things like um, diabetes or dementia, or caring for ourselves in our perimenopause
Hmm.
years can really help support the longevity of ourselves because we become more vulnerable during that time because
Yeah.
our hormones are not as stable and you're not getting that stable support from the things I had mentioned a little bit earlier. They
Hmm.
progesterone starts to go down first. This is why we tend to get more sometimes moody or irritable in the perimenopause phase, or start to feel worsening PMS symptoms, or start to feel more breast tenderness, or start to get heavier periods.
Yeah.
This happens because our progesterone becomes less abundant and less stable, just naturally. It's part of the
Mhm.
process. There's things that we can do though. We know that nutrient deficiencies, things like vitamin B or vitamin C deficiency, or stress, of course. Stress is a
Hmm.
big one. These will naturally lower our progesterone even more. So I like to think of it as like protecting what we got while we have it, right? And making sure that
Hmm.
we're doing the things that we can to help support, what we have while we have it, so that we get as much of that, like, of those gorgeous sex hormones as long as we can until we hit that phase of menopause and things switch. Menopause is not a bad thing for us necessarily. It takes us into like a whole new journey of our being. It's like, I think, a
Hmm.
spiritual upgrade for sure
Wow. Okay.
in
Yeah.
some ways, because our body is less worried about making humans and manifesting other things, like caring for others. And well, we actually become even better caretakers post menopause. So that sounds a bit confusing, but there's like this focus of we're going to eliminate this so that you have even more time to focus on yourself, your creative
Okay.
endeavors, the
Yeah. Yeah.
community at
Yeah.
large. Like it can be an upgrade for sure.
I actually know exactly what you're saying. I'm sure that the listeners are as well. It's more like you're still caring, but the caring is different. It's like when I hit 40, I stopped caring about certain things. Not that like, oh fuck you world. It's more like, oh, I don't know, I no longer care about these things that I used to care about. And it happened as soon as I hit 40. And the same happened when I hit 30. And it's like after menopause, you no longer care about these things and you care about other things. You're still caring, but the things you care about are different. Does
Yeah,
that,
absolutely. And
yeah?
I think you're taking me to this point I was trying to make much better, is that after all that time cycling, you're learning and growing each time, right? You're
Hmm.
reflecting, you're trying, and then it becomes clear to you the things that are truly important, the things that you want to spend your time on, the things
Yeah.
that are aligned with your purpose. And then you can just get on with that. You don't need
Yeah.
necessarily this period of experiment and reflect. You can get on with things, so to speak.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes
You've
sense.
had all your learning.
Yeah, my mom didn't. I mean, she's in her 60s now, but she had a situation where she had to have a hysterectomy, so her perimenopause and all that was not something that I can ask her about. So it's such a mystery for me, like, oh,
Mm.
that, oh, and people, I say, just go ask your mom. I'm like, my mom didn't have that.
Mm.
She had to have a hysterectomy like in her mid 30s, I think. So it's such a big like question mark for me of what does that look like, and like it just feels annoying when people are like, just ask your mom. I'm like, okay,
Mhm.
yeah, she's here, but I can't ask her these things. So I'm really happy we're talking about this, and I'm obviously very like intrigued because um you're 38, you mentioned, but the thing is with 40 it hits you on the face because you're like, what the fuck just happened with time?
Mhm.
And I think I mentioned this before on this and on the podcast, is that the days leading up to the age 40, I literally would wake up in the middle of the night and go to my calculator and actually subtract the year from the year of my birth because there must have been something wrong. And I did that so many times of like, how did this happen? How am I 40?
Mhm.
Like there must have been there must be some miscalculation because where did time go?
Okay, that was what's coming up for you. It just felt like
Yeah. Like I was at uni like yesterday, not 20 years ago. Like,
yeah, yeah.
and this whole thing with perimenopause, I'm like, "Oh my god, I'm here now? How did this happen?" In my head, I'm like this 26-year-old dancing to Pearl Jam, I still am, but like I'm not 26, but like that's the image I have in my head, and perimenopause just also hit me in the face. I'm like, "Oh shit, we're here?" Cuz I read about it or whatever, I hear about it. I'm like, "Yeah, that's something I'll worry about later." And I don't want
Right.
that to happen with menopause. I don't want to just all of a sudden wake up and be like, "Oh shit, it's here."
Well, that's true. I mean, it reminds me of what my mom always says in her head. She's 23 until she looks into the mirror, as like when you're young and you hear older people say that, you're just like, oh, come on. But then you experience it for yourself. And maybe it's, a reminder that we're always hopefully living in the
Mhm.
eternal now. It's not
In
really,
the eternal now, yeah, the generous
right?
present moment. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, in some ways, of course, we have a past and we have a future, but it feels so jumbled because it in some ways happens so quickly because
It's
the
all
past is
happening,
really
yeah.
just a thought that we have,
Yeah.
right? And
Yeah, it's like, is this an
feels
illusion? Did
wild.
I just make this up? Like, what's going on? So, yeah, time is weird, and I don't want this to happen again when is menopause? What time is menopause? 50?
Yeah, good. That's a great question because most people don't know too.
Mhm.
The average age is 51 or 52, depending
Got it.
on for most like Western white countries. I don't know the statistics everywhere, but I know that that's sort of the what the medical language here
Mhm.
says. But it can happen much, much earlier for some people, and it can happen
Got it,
later for
yeah.
some people. And like you
Yeah.
mentioned, asking your mom is kind of a pretty good indicator. It's
Mhm.
somewhat, accurate to have that genetic link because there is a true correlation there. But
Yeah.
it's not guaranteed that because your mom did it at, you know, 49 that you're going to do it at 49 either.
Yeah, got it.
So,
Cool.
but you can
Awesome.
expect it around sometime around then for most
Yeah.
people.
So I've got a few years, me and my period, me and my bestie. But I'm gonna learn.
You can really use this knowledge to still have, potentially 10 or more years of this cycling and
Mhm.
connection with yourself in this way.
Yeah, in that way. Wow. So anything else that you'd like to share? I don't really put a time limit on this. When we're flowing, but anything else that you'd like to speak into the space, tell our listeners, add to whatever anything that you said, start a new subject. It's, just go. You're like,
Well,
I cannot. I'm like hanging on every minute, every word you say. So yeah.
oh, I love, love, love that that's the case for you because I honestly love the work that you do and what you put out in
Thank
the
you.
world. It's been so beneficial to me in my life. So it's fun to
Oh,
get to
thank you.
share some of what I know, and hopefully that can help a little. I feel like I definitely said a lot today, a lot for people who are listening to probably need to digest or
Oh, I need to
review or
digest. Yeah,
so I
yeah,
don't know if I'll put anything else out there except
yeah.
for you know, come join me on Instagram if you want to learn more. I try to do as much as I can there. I'm not
Your
as
Instagram
active
is
as
awesome.
thank you. I'm not as active as, some other people, but I try to inform as much as I can and talk about these things as much as
Mhm.
I can. So if you're interested in learning more, there's that, or there's the book Wild Power. There's also an amazing book called Period Power by Maisie Hill. And she was one of my mentors for a while who
Oh, wow.
she, um, also studied this work and wrote a book about it. So yeah, if you loved what you heard today or just are curious about what you heard today, that those could be great resources. We're here for you so that you can keep learning and growing and manifesting
Mhm.
and yeah, creating your life in the way that you want
Creating.
to.
Yeah, I mean, like I said multiple times, your Instagram is a great resource for me, and I think it's a really good quality resource for everyone out there. Of course, I'm going to link everything in the show notes. So tell us about your offerings, because if people are not lining up to work with you after they heard that, I don't know who they are.
Yeah, well, the main offering I have is a 6-month one-on-one container program, as I
Mhm.
call it. And this is really for people who are trying or wanting or trying to get pregnant, people with menstrual cycle struggles, or people who have perimenopause symptoms that they're hoping to um, I guess, take control of or
Mhm.
understand better. So, really helping guide people through caring for themselves through these, sort of three different and a lot of times overlapping, um, let's say, I don't want to say problems because they're not always problems, but challenges that
Mhm.
we can have. And yeah, that's 6 months of working one on one with me. And
Yeah.
um, if you have any questions about it, you guys can definitely reach out to me and let me know.
I love that it's 6 months. I do love a long container, honestly. Sometimes I go through phases of offering only 6 months and then I go to 4 months, in my offers. But honestly, like there's nothing better than sinking your teeth in a long container with someone you trust and seeing how things evolve because the nervous system likes slow. Bam,
It's
bam, bam doesn't
true.
work. It's more like go slow, build that trust, build that safety, and see how things evolve. So I love that you offer that. That's awesome.
Yeah,
Cool. Well,
healing cycle stuff and hormones, it just takes a while. Our the health
yeah.
of our eggs and our ovaries have so much to do with that, and it takes
Hmm.
3 months of intervention to even really get to see shifts. So, um, yeah, I feel like it's the best way that I can help people is those longer containers.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, I will be linking everything in the show notes. Thank you so freaking much for all the wisdom that you dropped, for your time, for the work that you do, not just like this hour here on the podcast, the work, the work, the body of work that you have done throughout your 38 years here on earth, because it's really needed and your wisdom is beautiful, your energy is beautiful. And thank you so much for being here.
Oh, thank you so much for having me. I feel the same about you. Every time I see your face online, it fills me with so much joy. Your energy is so contagious, and your like genuine want to help people with something that is so complicated and complex and
Yeah.
full of trauma spots and discomfort, and your ability to make it joyful and light and lovely and informative and full of soul is very inspiring to me. So thank you for letting me have that love fest on you for a minute. And
Oh, I
I
receive, I receive. I'm like, oh, okay. I really receive that. Thank you so much for saying all this. It's beautiful. Hooey, what an interview. I hope you all enjoyed this interview as much as I did recording it. I not only took away so much from it, but I ended up hiring Rachel straight after our time together here after our recording. So I will pop in all her information in the show notes. If you have any questions for her, just reach out to her. I will also be linking all the books she recommended. I am currently reading Wild Power, which Rachel recommended earlier in the podcast interview, and it has completely changed my life. And I wish they taught this stuff at school. It really is so life changing. And yeah, we need to start talking more candidly, more openly about things. We talk about money a lot on this podcast, and money is a taboo subject, but we normalize it, we dissolve the shame around it to make it more of a normal subject, more of a subject that is empowering. And now the invitation is to shift that conversation towards our menstruation. There is no need for us to feel any shame or any guilt or anything about taking time off for our periods. I know it's not easy for all of us to do that, but just reframing the way we think about it, the way we talk about it, how it comes up in conversation, that needs to shift, that needs to change, because we are entering a new paradigm and menstruation is a taboo subject, but we need to change that so we can all just anchor into our power instead of anchoring into shame. With that, I love you and leave you. Thank you so much for being here, and I will see you next week. Bye for now.